round 12 of the 2012 Stock Cat Championship here at Donington Park. He's on the front row. Jake Farndon, he'll be there this time. Alongside him is Andrew Tibbs. Second row, two championship contenders. It's Joe Ferguson and Tom Bell. Row 3, a good qualifying time from Will Sargent. Sean Hagan is alongside him. The fourth row was Fincham and Fletcher. And we've got Drake and Digby. Drake, one of the newcomers. Another newcomer there, Shane Deegan. He starts 15th. Pip Hammond should have started alongside. He won't be there. Harry Campy, the youngest driver in the championship here, starts 17th. Our two on-board cameras start 19th and 23rd. Paul Jarvis and Steve Powsland. We have 29 cars that would take to the start, or should take to the start here. Of course, Pip Hammond, one driver that's not there. The way they've gone then, and it's Farndon who's going to take the lead. Bell goes second. Ferguson's third. Tibbs in the fourth as they now head on Hollywood down the Crater Curve for the first time of asking that. And they head down towards the old hairpin. It's all clean this time. Farndon, Bell, Ferguson, the top three. There in fourth is Andrew Tibbs. Bell trying to get the run out the corner. It's all rather single file on this first lap of the race down the Crater Curves into the old hairpin. Now up under Starkey's Bridge and towards McLean's, and now it's Andrew Tibbs that's trying to attack Joe Ferguson. The two cars are going to be side by side as they head into McLean's. Tibbs tries to outbrake him, but he's around the outside here at McLean's, and that should mean that Ferguson stays in front. Does he? No, Tibbs has gone right round him. He's up to third, but Ferguson's going to fight back into Coppet later on the brakes. He's got the inside line once again, and Joe Ferguson should move himself back up into that third position as the cars head down the back straight then for the first time and head down towards the chicane. We're on board with Steve Housley side by side in front between Paul Jarvis and Ben Forbes as they get on the brakes. Forbes trying to go right round the outside, very late on the brakes. The car snaps and spins right into Philip Wright. I think that was the two cars. I think they will end up in the gravel trap there at the chicane. I think they may be able to recover. Tibbs has dropped behind Ferguson and was under pressure of Fletcher. They're massive moments. That is the 53 car, Robert Drake, that had that huge moment. The car completely crossed up through Redgate, and it must have been contact there, but he managed to get it all back together. He's lost some places in all that. Top two got away then. It's Farndon and Bell. A big gap back to Ferguson, who runs in third after that side-by-side action for about half a lap between him and Andrew Tibbs. So they head up towards McLean's. Third Ferguson, fourth Tibbs, fifth Fletcher as they get onto the brakes for McLean's. Of course, Drake lost out a bit in that moment he had. Everybody else, except for Pip Hammond, still running. Pip Hammond, of course, a non-starter. All 28 still going, even after the Forbes and Wright incident down the chicane. So a bit back to line of stern action now. Completing the second lap of the race here at Donington Park. Out the chicane they come then. It's Farndon and Bell. Bell falling back a bit now for Farndon. Ferguson trying to gap Tibbs. They come onto the front straight. It's Shane Deegan. He's had a good first couple of laps. He's moved up the order. And into Redgate they go then. So it's Ferguson. Lights ablaze there for Andrew Tibbs in fourth. They turn onto Hollywood, down the Crater Curves. Fletcher still right behind Tibbs. And that Fincham there in sixth. Seventh is Digby. Eighth is Deegan. He started 15th. Ninth is Ward. He won the first race of the weekend. Then in 10th position it's Drake. 11th is Thornton Jones. 12th is Jarvis. 13th is Powsland. Sargent's there in 12th. Then we got Jarvis and Powsland. Next up is Terry Roughton. As the cars turn their way now out of the chicane, Farndon kicking up the dirt. Bell still in second. Third is Ferguson. It's starting to catch him ever so slightly now. They come on the front straight down towards Redgate. Once again go the race leaders, and it's Farndon and Bell still pretty close between the two cars. Bell will be wanting to take the race victory here, get a bit close to Ferguson in the championship standings. And it was after lap 2, 1.1 seconds. It's down to 0.6 of a second between the two leaders now. Tom Bell really moving towards Jake Farndon. A lot of that could have been that mistake out the chicane from Farndon, but now, of course, that means Bell is right there or thereabouts. Tim's not really fallen away from Ferguson. Remember the first race, we saw Ferguson's car come on strong in the second half of the race, so expect perhaps a similar thing to happen in this one. If you look a bit further down the order as the cars make their way down towards the old hairpin. For the fourth time in this 13-minute plus 1 lap race, as all the races are in 2012. Farndon now starting to get that gap back up to Bell, it seems. And Fletcher really still going strong on top of Bell. Deegan has got ahead of Matt Fincham now. Fincham seems to have lost a couple of places since we last mentioned him. And here's the battle headed and coming back at him. Fincham back through ahead of Deegan, but then will he run out wide? And Shane Deegan's going to try and get the cut back here. Fincham tries to defend the line, but Deegan's still got his nose in there, so that means he'll be able to draw up alongside through Hollywood. The two cars are going to run side by side down the Crane of Curves. We've seen that Deegan can do this. He did it in the first race and he's done it yet again, and Fincham's just trying to attack back up on the inside. He cuts back for the old hairpin, cuts the corner a little bit, and he runs out a bit wide, and Deegan's got back in front of Fincham then Martin Ward there as well. So the three of them head up towards McLean's. A good scrap between that trio of cars as Ferguson even under lots of pressure from Andrew Tibbs as they head up towards Coppice. Steve Houseland turns his way through McLean, he's up all the curve on the exit. He has got Terry Roughton not too far behind him as they turn their way onto Coppice. Smack the curb for continuing their way onto the back straight here at Donington Park. And now towards the chicane. Getting back up at the front after we said it was 6 tenths, then after lap 4 it went up to 9 tenths or so. They crossed the line just now. 1.2 seconds is the gap between Ferguson and Bell. And side by side almost for 5th between Fletcher and Digby. Digby just gets cut off by Fletcher there, so Patrick Fletcher stays in front as the cars turn their way onto the Crane of Curves. Got halfway distance in this race, they've got the brakes for the old hairpin. The two cars nose to tail. Two championship rivals from 2011. That fantastic last race we had at Cadwell Park last year in October between Patrick Fletcher and Matt Digby. Fletcher taking the championship. Neither of them really in a strong move for the championship as they head to Snetterton in 5 weeks' time for the final rounds of the championship. Turn through Coppice, so stay in the same order. Still at the front though, it's Jake Farndon, second's Tom Bell, third Ferguson, fourth Tim, fifth Fletcher, sixth Digby is running out a bit wide. There's Shane Deegan, he's in seventh, eighth is Fincham, ninth Ward, 10th Fortune Jones, 11th is Sargent. Paul Jarvis now is closed up to him as they head down towards Redgate Corner. Already there, Shane Deegan, Matt Fincham and Martin Ward still all involved in that battle. And here's the Sargent and Jarvis battle. Paul Jarvis drives up alongside, then the number 11 and number 12 cars run side by side down through the Crane of Curves. Now can Jarvis go right round the outside of Sargent here? Sargent keeps his foot in there on the inside line, but Jarvis on the inside line for the old hairpin. Again, Will Sargent carrying the speed around the outside of the corner, and that's going to work for him, so he stays in front of Paul Jarvis for the moment. We can ride aboard with Jarvis then as we head up towards McLean's. And Sargent certainly has got the position for the moment. This has really allowed Nick Fortin-Jones to sprint away in front of them. To the brakes, the cars go then for Coppice. The long right-hander bringing us onto the back straight as the cars now head down towards the chicane. Sean Hagan has retired from the race, so lost the first car from the race as the cars turn their way through the chicane. And off goes Sargent, off goes Jarvis. I believe that Patrick Fletcher's blown an engine down there, so oil down, and Fletcher of course now out the race as well, so it's another car we've lost. So quite a few cars taken to the grass there on the excellent chicane. But Sargent staying ahead of Jarvis. And Robert Drake, he obviously managed to stay on the road. Wasn't Drake a bit further up the order perhaps? So, yes, Drake must have been really caught out in that. In fact, we believe that he fell down the order a lap or so earlier, so whatever happened to Drake there, but so he's now behind these two. So Sargent and Jarvis moving up the order a bit now. They head up towards McLean's. They're battling now for 10th position in this race. Sargent still just about has it as they smack the curb at McLean's. Sargent has to go defensive for Coppice. Sits the car in the middle of the road, so Jarvis can't find a way through. But now Jarvis will be looking for the run down the back straight. So he sits in the slipstream of Will Sargent. Sargent defends the corner nice and early, so Will Jarvis will have to go to the outside. But Sargent now, there's a nice strong engine in that car, was able to pull clear of Jarvis enough to stay in front for the chicane. The car breaks away on the exit of the corner a little bit. See our leader again, it's Farndon. Second spell, really been closed in by Ferguson and Tibbs now. Then in 5th is Digby, 6th is Deegan, then Fincham and Ward, and here's the battle for 10th. It's still Sargent ahead of Jarvis. As Drake's fallen back a bit again, he's got Steve Powsland not that far behind him. We're on the penultimate lap of the race now. The 13 minutes will run out at the end of this lap, and they get the last lap board down. This Sargent's car really moving about through the old hairpin there. Jarvis will be looking for the run up towards McLean's, but Sargent stays in front for the moment as the cars get onto the brakes. Jarvis gets to the apex a bit earlier than Sargent. Nothing really separating the two cars though. To the brakes for Coppice. Again, Jarvis finding the apex perhaps a bit sooner than the car in front of him. Back onto the back straight again, and Sargent still once again got that good enough of a gap to stay in front, it seems, as the cars get onto the brakes. And now having the speed through the chicane is Paul Jarvis, but Will Sargent's car parked right in the middle of the road, so no way for him to find a way through. We're on to the final lap of the race, and Tom Bell and Joe Ferguson just lapped car of Barbara Schilliker, but it does seem that Bell's going to have perhaps a big enough gap to stay ahead of Ferguson. Jake Farndon's really pulled away. Shane Deegan runs wide through Redgate, as did the race leader on that lap, in fact, Jake Farndon. What's happening? That's gap for 10th. Well, Sargent still in front of Jarvis. They seem to have a big enough gap back to Drake to not to worry too much about him for the moment. Through the corner curves we go though. Down towards the old hairpin for the final time. Sargent still staying clear of Jarvis, perhaps by a couple of car lengths this time as they head underneath Starkey's Bridge. Up towards McLean's then. And Jake Farndon then heading towards victory here. The 12th round of the Demon Tweaks and Yokohama Stock Hatch Championship of 2012. Now just staying ahead of Ferguson, so just line in 4th and Tibbs, 5th and Digby. Deegan gets 6th, back for 10th then. They mend their way round the chicane. It's still just Sargent, but Jarvis gets the run. He draws up alongside. He's going to be in front of Will Sargent as they cross the line just by 0.03 of a second. But the win did go to Jake Farndon by 1.3 seconds there to Tom Bell. Joe Ferguson round off the podium. So then we head to Snetterton. It's going to be Joe Ferguson leading just to Tom Bell on drop scores.